welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another tutorial. It's me, IG, and I'm back with a new tutorial. If today is your first time of stopping by, welcome. My returning subscribers, you guys are amazing. Thanks for all your support. So guys, I want us to DIY this beautiful gown that is on the screen. It's just a pencil gown. That is a straight gown, fitted gown with a exaggerated sleeve, a puff sleeve long. You can use any material of your choice. I'm using a lycra material, and the sleeve is going to be organza or a net, a strong net or a soft net, but a net that is going to show the style because the sleeve is the drama. So guys, without wasting much of your time, let us get started. Now guys, I have folded our material in two. We are cutting out the front panel, after which we are going to cut out the back panel. So here is our starting point. So I'm going to measure my shoulder. Shoulder we are working with is 15, divided by 2. You are going to have 7.5 plus ½ inch seam allowance. Remember, this is a stretchy material, so I'm not going to add too much allowances to it. So this is our 8 inches. So we are going to come down by 7.5 inches. I'm coming down exactly my shoulder measurement. I'm not adding the ½ inch. Then I'm going to give it a straight line because it's a stretchy material. So I've made it into a straight line. We are marking our vertical measurement now. So now we are taking our bust measurements. We need our bust measurement. This is our bust measurement. And the next thing we need is our waist measurement, which is 17 inches. The bust measurement is 10. The waist is 17 inches. But we are going to mark the waist at 19 inches. Why? Because we are going to use the bust dart. So when you use the bust dart, you are going to have shortage of material after you have joined it together. So that is why we are going to make use of 19 inches as our half length. We are going to come to that. So now the hip length we are working with is 22. From the shoulder to the 22 is our hip length, and the length of the material of the gown we are making is going to be 45 inches, or let's make it 46 inches plus 1 seam allowance to fold it, which is 47 inches, which is here. Now I'm going to make it into a straight line. Guys, I've made it into a straight line. Do you see it? So now I'm going to measure out, and also I'm going to measure out 8 inches on the chest line to give it a straight rule for the armhole curve. Do you see it? So now I'm going to take the the depth of the neckline and the wide of it. The depth of we are working is going to be 5 inches because it's going to be down, while the wide of it is going to be 3 inches. So we are going to connect it. You start with little, then when it's not what you want, you can increase it, because when you increase it and it's too much, you cannot amend. So now we curve it. This is our neckline. Then we come down here by 1 inch as our shoulder slope. This is our shoulder slope. Then we divide the remaining, which is 6.5, divided by 2. We are going to have 3.25. So you now come in by ½ inch. On that 3.25, you came in by ½ inch. Then you now curve it. You can use your armhole curve, or you can use your free hand. This is the armhole curve. You can equally place it in this form. Do you see it? To curve it. Do you see it, guys? So now the next thing to do is to determine our dart on our bust point. So now this is our bust point. Here is our bust point. So we are going to take the measurement. So the chest we are working with is 38. Divided by 2, you are going to have 9.5. We are now inserting our horizontal measurement. 9.5 on the chest line. 9.5 here. Here is our 9.5. Being a fitted, we are going to add only 1 inch seam allowance. It's a fitted and also it's elastic material. So now on the bust point, we are going to make use of our nipple to nipple measurement. Nipple to nipple we are working with is 7 divided by 2, 3.5, add it ½ inch, 4 inches. On this bust point, we are going to mark 4 inches. Do you see it? On this bust point, we are going to mark 4 inches. Then we are going to also insert the measurement of our chest measurement, which is 9.5 inches. We mark it here. Now, here that we mark 9.5 inches, we are going to come down. We are going to come down here by 2 inches. We come down here by 2 inches. Do you see it? Here is our 2 inches. That is why we added 2 inches after the waistline, so that we are going to use it to replace these 2 inches we are going to use now as our dart on the bust area. So now here is our 4 inches, our bust point. So we are going to come out more by 1.5 inch from this bust point, because these 2 inches you are going to divide it in 2. When you divide it in 2, you are going to have 1 here. Do you see it? And you are going to connect it. You are going to connect it here to the bust point. But when you connect it here to the bust point, it's not going to be nice. It's going to be so pointy. So we are going to come out by 1 inch from these 4 inches from the bust point. We will now come out by 1.5 inch. 1.5 inches. So on this 1.5 inches, we are going to now connect our darts. So you connect it. Do you see it? And also you connect this. So here is our dart. This is the dart we are going to take in. Do you see it? This is the dart we are going to take in. Do you see it? So now let's go to our waist. The waist we are working is waist 34 divided by 4. You are going to have 8.5. So we are going to mark at 8.5. Here is our 8.5. Then we add only 1 inch seam allowance. And on the hip we are working with is 42. Divide it by 4. You are going to have 10.5. So we mark at 10.5 here. Here is our 10.5. Here is our 10.5. Then we add 1 inch seam allowance, which is 11.5 here. So on the length of this gown, we are going to only make the use of our hip measurement, which is 10.5. So we are going to mark 10.5 here. That is what we are going to use, only 10.5, no seam allowance, because we want it to be fitted. So now we are going to connect. But before then, on this bust point, we are going to come out, so that we are not going to cut it. We are going to come out while cutting it. We are going to come out. So now we are going to connect it. So from this chest line, we connect to the waist. And on the waist, we connect to the hip. And on the hip, we now go down to our length. When you now take in your 2 inches as your dart, then your waist will come to the normal size. Do you see it? So that is it. So from the waist here, we will now connect to the hip from the first waist. We are connecting it from the first waist. So now while cutting out, we are going to come out by some inches, like I said. From this bust point that we now mark 9.5 plus 1 inch seam allowance, we are going to come out to it, to this 1 inch, to also accommodate this area so that when you cut it out, it's not going to be short. Do you see it? So we are going to connect it in this form. So this is the way we are going to cut it out. Do you see it? So when we now sew it in, we are going to have our exact measurement. So you come out by 1 inch in this form. Then you connect it to the waist. Do you see it, guys? So now we are going to cut it out. Remember to add your 1/2 inch on the upper side to join it to the back. Now, guys, I have cut out our front panel. Do you see it? So when we now take in our darts, our 1 inch darts to form our bust dart, do you see it? We are going to get our exact measurement. So now it's ready. So the next thing to do is to cut out the back panel. So now, guys, having cut out our front panel, let us cut the back panel. So this line you are seeing here is the zip allowance, 1 inch that I reserved for the zip allowance. So the measurements of the back starts after the 1 inch of the zip allowance. So here is our 8 inches, our shoulder. Then we came down by 1 inch as our shoulder slope. Then connect it. Do you see it? Then remember the opening, the wide of the neckline we're using is 3 inches. Here is our 3 inches. Then we now come down to connect it as our shoulder slope to the 1 inch. And here is our 6.5. Divide it in 2, 3 3/4. Then from there you connect the armhole. Do you see it? So this is the armhole of the back panel. And remember, from here to 7.5 is our length for the chest line, to 17 is our waist, from shoulder to 22 is our hip, and the length we are working with is 25 plus 1 inch is 45 plus 1 inch 46. So this is our length. So now we've made it into a straight line. So now the chest line, we are going to add our bust point there, which is 9.5 plus 1 inch. Then on the waist, we are going to insert our waist, which is 8.5 plus 1 inch, 9.5 plus another 1 inch for the dart. The back is going to have that. So on this chest line, which is 7.5 inches, we are going to come down to 8.5 inches. So from there, we are going to measure our nipple to nipple, which is 4 inches, and we'll now come down also to the waist, 4 inches. And also to the hip, we are going to come down by 4 inches. Do you see it? We now mark it into a straight line. We are now trying to insert our dart at our back using the nipple to nipple measurement. So on this waistline, we are going to take 1/2 inch from both sides, 1/2 inch from both sides, and we are going to connect it to this 8.5 inches that we came down. That is the 1/2 inch. We connect it there, which is the darts, to make it fitted at the back. And on this hip, we are going to come up by 2 inches. So from these 2 inches that we came up, we connect it to the 1/2 to the waist. Do you see it? So our dart is now ready at the back. So let's take our horizontal measurement of the waist, which we have done. Do you see it? We have done it. And on the hip is 10.5. Remember, it's 42. Divided by 4 is 10.5 plus 1 inch. We are not adding any allowance, only 1 inch seam allowance. Then on the down part of it, we bring down our hip measurement, which is 10.5 inches, no seam allowance, because we want it to be fitted. So now the next thing is just to connect it. So from the chest, we connect to our waist, and waist, we turn it in this form to connect to our hip. and from the hip we connect to the 10.5 on the length. You see it, guys, we have connected it, but the back I want it to be fanciful at the neckline. That is, the neckline is going to be a fanciful one. So from this upper side, we are going to come down just 1 inch. Well, I want it to have a sweetheart at the back. So this 1 inch is going to be the open. Do you see? This 1 inch is going to be the open. So from this shoulder, I'm going to come down by 3 inches. Using 1 inch as our opening of the neck. Then on these 3 inches, we are going to use it. That is where we are going to start to form our sweetheart. So I'm going to make use of the chest line. Remember, the chest line is 7.5 inches. So on this 7.5 inches is what I'm going to use to make the sweetheart. So I'm going to use my armhole curve now. So from these 3 inches, remember the width of the back neckline is also 3 inches. So on these 3 inches now, remember we came down by 3 inches and the width of it is also 3 inches. So on these 3 inches here, I'm going to use my armhole curve to curve it as a sweetheart to the chest line. You can do as deep as you want. You can come down to 10, 11, depends on how deep you want it to be at your back. That is your choice. But this 7.5 is enough for me. So now I came down, do you see it? So I use it. So on this side now, I'm going to come down on these 3 inches. Now I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch. On these 3 inches, I came down by 1/2 inch. So there, I'm going to turn my curve in this form. Remember, I want it to have a sweetheart, so I'm going to turn it in this form just to mark it to come down. Do you see it? I now came down in this form to have a heart, that is a sweetheart. So now the next thing to do is just to cut it out. But remember, while cutting out this, come up by 1/2 inch so that you can use it to sew it. Don't cut exactly at the 1/2 inch you came down. Add 1/2 inch to sew it to the material. So now let's cut it out. Remember the shoulder, your 1/2 inch to join it to the front panel. I want us to cut this sweetheart so that we know what I'm saying. So here I'm coming up by 1/2 inch. That is to use it to sew it together. Do you see it? Do you see it now? So now guys, I'm going to cut it out. So now this sweetheart, I'm coming up here to cut it. Do you see it now? So I'm going to cut here open. So here I'll cut it open. Do you see it? So we are just going to place our pin or whatever we want to place here. We are going to place it. So now the next thing is just to cut out all this side. So now guys, I have cut open the back. Do you see it? So the next thing we have to do now is to come in from this waist. We are going to come in by 1/2 inch to avoid it puffing at the back. After inserting our zip, we are going to come in by 1/2 inch. So on this 1/2 inch, we are going to come down 2 inches away from the hip line. We are going to come down to connect it in this form. Do you see it? And on this 1/2 inch, we are going to connect it to the back, that is to the neck at the back. Do you see it? From the 1/2 inch we came in, This is just to avoid puffing at the back. So guys, do you see it? So the next thing to do is just to cut it. Do you see it, guys? So when inserting our zip, we are going to still come in by 1 inch that we left our zip allowance. So we are going to connect it 1 inch when inserting our zip. By so doing, it's not going to puff at the back. Do you see it? We are going to still maintain our 1 inch at the back. Do you see it? So our zip will start here. So guys, this is our panels. Here is our front panel. Here is our front, and here is our back. So what I have to do now is to take it to the machine, take in this 1/2 inch. I'll take in the dart at the back, also on this side, and also the bust dart is not having waist dart on the front side. I don't want it to have waist dart, but if you want, you can fix yours, but I want to make only use of the bust dart. So I'm going to also take it in this form. Then I will now fix the two together, the front and the back. But before then, I'm going to use this back to cut out the facing, because I'm going to use it to turn it. So now just take. So guys, this is our facing. Do you see it? So this is our facing. Do you see it? I'm going to use it to turn it. So I'm going to do the same to the front part. I'm going to also cut out facing for the neckline. I've not cut out the neckline. You can decide to make it to be high. You can also decide to make it to be low. So I'm going to maintain my 5 inches that I came down. So now I'm going to also place to cut out my facing for it also. So guys, I've cut out the facing of the front panel also. So the next thing to do now is to take it to the machine, use the facing, turn the back, turn also the front, join the front and the back together, and also add the zip, and I'll be back for us to fix the sleeve. Now guys, I have joined our panels together. Do you see the back darts? I take it in. This is the back dart. Do you see it? And also add the zip. And also on the front side, our bust dart. Do you see it? Do you see our bust dart? And I close the front and back together using our 1 inch. So our gown is almost ready. Do you see it? It's just a fitted gown. Do you see it? And that's the back. Remember our back that we made to have a sweet heart neckline at the back, the opening. Do you see it? So let me just pin it down. Later I'm going to use a pressing button or a pressing pin to hold it. Do you see it? That's the sweetheart we made at the back. Do you see it? So now the next thing to do is to put it aside and cut out our sleeve. I'm going to use my already drafted panel for the sleeve. Please check it out. I'll link the video on the description box below for you to check it out. I made a well-detailed tutorial on how to achieve this. So now this is my net that I'm going to use. You can use organza. Normally I wanted to use organza, but it's not available for the moment. So I'm going to make use of my net, which is also good. So now I'll fold it in two. Guys, I folded my material in two. I'll cut out one, then I'll use it to cut out the other one. So here is my panel. I'll just place it on this folded edge. I'm going to come in by 5 inches. Remember, I want it to be an exaggerated puff sleeve or balloon sleeve. So now I came in by 5 inches. I placed my already drafted panel on the 5 inches that I came in, and on the length, my full length is 22 inches. I added extra 2 inches here. Do you see it? So this is the first measurement. This is the first measurement. So from here, till the down part is 24 inches. Remember, I'm going to add band to it. So when I add band to it, with this length is going to bounce up, and on this upper side I'm going to add 3 inches. I'm going to come up by 3 inches here. So from this 3 inches now, I'm going to connect it. See the way I'm going to connect it? So this is where I'm going to make my ruffles. Do you see it? And on this down, I'm going to mark it straight. Do you see it, guys? So this is the way to cut it. So here I'm going to pleat it or fold it to achieve my ruffles at the shoulder. So do you see it now, guys? So I'm going to now, so on this down we have, let's see what we have here. We have here 13.5. So on this down we are going to also have 13.5. Remember, when we fold it with the measurement of our pulse, is going to bounce up. So this is the way I'm going to now cut it out, and after that I'll use it to cut the second one before cutting out the front part. So let's cut it out. Now guys, I have cut out our sleeve. Do you see it? What we measured out. So I've cut out the 2 of it. Do you see it? So now I'm going to notch here that we added our 3 inches. This is where I'm going to stop while making my ruffles. I'm going to stop here, or pleating it. So the next thing, to open it up, then cut out the front armhole. Just open it up in this form. Remember, it's 2. The right sides facing each other. Just open it up like this and cut out the front panel. That is the front armhole. Just cut it out. Do you see? This is the front armhole. Do you see? So the next thing now, this is our curve. Do you see it? I measured out 3 inches. So when you open it up, it's going to be 6 inches plus ½ inch allowance on both sides. 1 inch is going to be 7 inches. Do you see it? Do you see it? 7 by 8. That is what I have as my curve, measuring my pulse. So measure your pulse, whatever you have, cut it out, depending on how the length you want. I want the band or the curve to be 3 inches. So I added ½ inch to join it to the net. So now I'm going to take it to the machine. So take the sleeve. This is the sleeve. I'm going to use my longest stitch to gather it to come to this length of my curve. Do you see it? I'll gather it to come to the length of my curve. I'll sew it to it, then close it up and also add it to our gown. I've made series of video on how to achieve this type of sleeve. You can equally check it out. I'll link it on the description box below for you guys to check it out. So now I'll finish it up and for us to see the final look. This is our gown that we have just DIY. Do you see how simple but gorgeous it is? The curve of the sleeve and also the balloon sleeve. Do you see it? Do you see the beautiful back? Do you see the sweethearts that we made on the back? Do you see how lovely it is? So beautiful. Do you see it? So guys, do you see it? That's the gown we have just DIY. So beautiful. If this tutorial has been helpful, don't forget to like, share and comment on my videos. And if you have not subscribed, consider subscribing. Support me to grow this channel. Leave your comments and I will get back to you. Love you guys and see you in my next video. Bye.